Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for coming today to join us for this conversation with Akinbode Akinbiyi. I see a few friends out in the room. Nisan, so good to see you. So let's get into it. Okay. Oop. Well, we can start there. Akinbode suggested that I give a personal introduction as to how we met to bring you into our universe. So I met Akinbode in 2015 at the Bamako Biennale. So it's already been 9 years, Akinbode. Can you believe it?
I think almost 10 years.
Almost 10. Time is seriously flying. We've sustained a conversation. We've met in Johannesburg, and now we get to meet in Lagos. And really, when we started thinking about the thematic of cities as being something urgent, well, I guess it's been urgent for a long time because we know there's been a lot of exhibition making around cities. I returned to your practice, Akinbode. Especially since I found this really beautiful essay by a Nigerian poet by the name of Odia Ofemun called Imagining Otherwise. And actually, if you're interested in Glendora publication, it's actually in the library. I really suggest picking it up because it's quite an incredible issue on the city of Lagos. And he said something quite remarkable in the essay. He was writing about cities and also the power of imagination. And he said that cities are humankind's most permanent experiment in living together. But the challenge is to find a common morality that holds people together. And I think that that's the case in many urban centers across the world, not simply Lagos. And when we were thinking about how to respond to this theme, or this idea, let's say, of the city, that's how we came to the idea of the mangrove, and the metaphor of the mangrove, which we've spoken about continuously. And he's promised to take me to the Lekki Conservatory because that's one place in Lagos, apparently, where mangroves still exist. So let's start with a very, fundamental question, Akinbode. How did photography or art come to you, or you to photography?
Good afternoon, everybody. That's a very complex question because as in so many situations in life, things come or go past you, and you grab hold of them or you go into them. This was the case with photography, in that I was already very much into the arts, especially literature. I wanted to become a writer, actually. And then photography came my way at around the same time as a kind of hobby, and eventually became my profession, my obsession, and my path in life.
You know, I remember when we met in 2015, I was with two young Ethiopian photographers, and you were explaining what photography was to them, or it was a conversation, actually, and you said something that was very poignant, and it really stuck in my mind. You said that photography is writing with light.
That is actually the meaning of photography. Photo, light, graphy, writing. So writing with light. So whenever I talk to, encourage younger colleagues, I always stress the very, very strong importance of studying light. Sunlight, moonlight, night light, light everywhere, anywhere, all the time. It's a constant, ongoing engagement.
I've been thinking about photography for quite some time. You know, within the context of the fair and the special projects, one of our mandates is really to bring in mediums that are not typically shown within the gallery sector, just to make sure that we're expanding that space. I recall actually an essay that was written about Sumi Smart Cole. I think it was by Tam Fioferi, where they were talking about in the 1980s that photography really was not being very well received. And I connect this to something that we were speaking about yesterday, that art is actually anything that we say it is, right? That we can flow through any medium, through any means of communication to name what we believe and consider to be art. And I came to artistic practice through writing, and choosing words that hold commonly held, or let's say translate ideas, is something that you're constantly thinking about as a writer. And it was quite interesting because you said to me yesterday, we were talking about this idea of landscape, and you told me about the Yoruba word for landscape.
Which I still don't know fully, completely, but I spoke years ago with my mother, and she said the Yoruba word has something, or the meaning of the shadow of the land, the spirit of the land. I think it's very, very important to always listen into your environment, and thereby you begin to understand its own tones, resonances, its language. Language is a form of writing or a form of reading, communicating, and then you go in deeper and you begin to understand. One thing I really want to stress, it never ends. You start one day and it just keeps on going on until actually the very last day when you depart this earth. Interestingly, at the very beginning when you come on this earth, it's a cry. The baby or the newborn baby's cry to breathe out and take back in. I think this is very, very, very important in understanding what life is about, or on another aspect, what art is about.
So, when we were talking about Ojeikere, one of the things that I found quite remarkable was that he was self-taught. The only information that I found about him in terms of how he might have had contact with images was through postcards. And then you told me maybe he also was looking at magazines and newspapers in terms of like how to develop a sense or an idea about what an image could be. But then you also spoke to me about something quite interesting about light, and light in the context of forests. Could you elaborate a little bit about that?
So I'm very, very sensitive to the Western world's hegemonic way of defining things. So apparently photography was actually discovered or developed in the 19th century in France and Britain. But if you go back into time, so in the past, you realize many peoples, especially those living in woods, forests, and other landscapes, would have seen the movement of the sun, a source of light, and the shadows it forms. Especially in woods and forests, where you can actually see the forms of the higher up realms shadowed onto the ground. And these are actually forms of communication about the weather, about the light, about the forest itself, all kinds of things. So there were and are still peoples who actually read and understand their environment through the shadow, play of light, so many different aspects in this respect. So that's, I think, the beginning, or the one aspect of photography. This, because in the 19th century, those who wanted to actually fix the image use this source of light, looking at it, and try to fix it through chemical means.
So yeah, I was thinking about his capacity to observe and what might have been the influences. So I really love that you brought that space of knowledge to the conversation with me. So today we're going to try to weave in Ojeikere's practice in relationship to Akinbode's, and just also thinking about photography at large, as well as introduce you to his practice as well. So you told me that you first saw him when you were a student at the University of Ibadan.
I'm not 100% sure. I was studying in Ibadan, 1966 to 69. And I often observed, especially at celebration time when people got their degrees, the photographers who came onto the campus to photograph those in their robes, in their, how do you call that thing again? This
cap and gown?
Yeah, cap and gown. And I believe I did notice him then, but I'm not 100% sure. I definitely met him, and we introduced ourselves to him in 1977 at Festac. He was and always has been, a very wonderful gentleman, very gracious and hospitable. already then. And then later, at the beginning of the 21st century, 2000, 1999, I got to know him much better. Because I was asked to curate a Nigerian show in the Biennale in Bamako, and I chose him as one of the main photographers of the Nigerian section.
Mm-hmm. Can you talk to us a little bit about the role of somebody like Ojeikere in your life, for example, thinking about elders and community?
So I was thinking about this question in particular because I'm about 16 years younger than him. So I'm not quite the next generation, but almost. But when his book came out on hairstyles, it was just, for me, mind-boggling, or it blew me away. Because you saw now a Nigerian photographer, an artist, who went in depth into, obviously, our Nigerian hairstyles, but beyond that, into photography. He's a master photographer, not just on the continent, worldwide. I always associate him with 3 other photographers. There are many others. All 3, it's actually 4, were born in the year 1930. And I believe all 4 now have passed on. One of them is David Goldblatt, a South African. And then also Bernd and Hilla Becher, 2 German photographers, a couple. And they all photographed in a very similar way. They were cataloging, documenting, being very sensitive in their own way to their environment. So, but I don't know whether they knew each other. I met David Goldblatt later, and he knew of the work hairstyles. He knew of that already. Mm-hmm. But I don't think they actually personally met each other. But this is one thing I want to stress. Nobody is an island. And what you are trying to express, if you really come out with it, then you begin to understand others are out there, sometimes in my environment, in my country, on the continent, or on this planet, who have a similar goal in life. And then either indirectly, directly, you start to communicate.
Mm-hmm. So moving on to your practice, sorry, I think I had a slide, but it went backwards on me. Okay, there we go. You've talked about this idea of walking and wandering. Where does this reference come from, and what does it mean for you?
So I realized already as a child I loved to walk. In fact, my siblings and some friends call me Johnny Walker from the whiskey brand. And I always loved to walk, especially I've realized over the years, I'm a sucker for the next corner. So when you go around the next corner, you still see another corner in the distance. I keep on going until nightfall. So I've loved wandering. And later on, when I was a teenager, young adult, I started photographing on my wanders. So that's why, and especially in cities, because cities for me are the nexus, the hub of where we today, especially as humanity, where we are. I mean, I do respect and wander on the countryside, the rural countrysides, at the beach, of course, the deserts, all over the place. But cities are one of my main themes.
Mm-hmm. So can you tell us, what year did you start documenting or taking photographs or making photographs in Lagos?
So, actually, it started already at Festac, 77, and even before then, because then when I was at UI, I was a hobby photographer, but it's 1 or 2 images, because we lived in Apapa, so I was taking images of Apapa then, but very few. But then it started in earnest in the 80s. So I came back with my medium format camera and started photographing Lagos. Because Lagos is where I grew up, and I wanted to understand it intuitively, but also photographically.
We were talking about this image taken in 1988 from Lagos All Roads. And there's a couple of things that are happening in this image that I thought we could talk about. One is the idea of movement and stillness.
I was telling Missla, I'm actually standing still and waiting for people to go by, but it's the lady in the image who is moving. She has taken on my wandering, so to speak, in that particular moment. Photography is very fragmentary. I mean, took maybe less than a second to make this image. Next minutes, seconds, other things were happening already. You can see this is on Broad Street, just getting into Tinubu Square, and you see the pavements, the road, the good condition there. This is how many years ago? About something like 35 years ago. It's really, but anyway, these are the kind of things. So photographs not only document, not only catalog, but they also record a time in history, a fragment, a moment in history. And I would like to stress the building in the middle at the back has gone. The one on the right-hand side, as you're looking at the image, is still there, and also the one on the left, a bit configured now.
You've been working durationally on the subject of cities. What keeps you interested in returning, for example, to Lagos? Is the All Roads series still going?
It's still ongoing, and I'm photographing even today as well. The thing is, like I mentioned, it's a fragmentary moment. The next moment, slightly different. It can be the same, of course, but it's constantly changing. There's a constant weaving. That is what brings me back all the time. So I have many themes: Lagos, Dakar. I live in Berlin at the moment. Berlin, or anywhere I go, I photograph. But I realize the next second, the next is different. So you literally, if you want to, and I do that sometimes, I keep on photographing.
We're going to see this in the next series on Sea Never Dry, that there's like different time periods. When you are looking at the archive and looking at the story, how do you deal with arranging time and what is actually documented in the image? Like right now you talked to me about, the pavement. The pavement is great, and you see people walking at ease.
So in making images, in a year, I don't know how many I've taken making. It's usually around 500 rolls of film. Each is 12. That's about 6,000, I think, images? Or 6,000 images. Am I right? I'm not sure anyway. I'm not very good at mathematics. But anyway, I look at the contact sheets and themes, narratives, storylines literally cry out to me. So I keep on working at them. And it's an ongoing, continuous process. Fortunately now, it is coming to some kind of fruition in that I'm already starting to publish books. Missla has one on her lap there. I have 2 or 3 others out now. So it's a gradual, slow process of literally coming to fruition, whereby the fruition doesn't stop. It keeps on continuing. Very interestingly, and I think this will happen definitely with the archive of Papa Ojeikere, you will see that there's so much more in the archive. In my case, the same thing too. So you keep on working at it, and hopefully others in the future to come.
You know, when I was thinking about the idea of cities and also thinking about Lagos, there have been some significant exhibitions around this topic, and I was thinking about Okhai Ojeikere and Oluigwe's curatorial contribution for the show at the Tate, City Art and Culture in the Modern Metropolis. And then also, as you just mentioned, the show that you did in Bamako, where you brought Ojeikere there. Has the conversation, because when it comes to Lagos, oftentimes you're the contributor. Your photographs are quite tend to be representative of Lagos. Has the conversation on cities changed at all?
Big time, big time. There's such a young, very vibrant generation all over the continent. Also, of course, here in Nigeria, here in Lagos, many other cities, photographing. And some of them are really pushing their work out there. I just wrote an foreword, afterword for a book called Echo, by a young photographer called Oli. I think his full name is Olujide Otikare. He's based in London, but he's of Nigerian stock. And he's just published a book on Lagos, color work. So there are people now really working out there. And in the photographic community worldwide, people now are aware of what is happening on the continent. The other day, I was talking in, with a smaller group. It's very, very sad, but in many parts of the world, when people think of Africa, they think of animals, of going on safari, of Kenya, things like, I mean, it's madness. They don't know that we have cities, this kind of thing. Gradually now it's coming to, they're becoming aware of this.
You know, I was thinking about something that Stuart Hall had said, is that images are the most saturating media of our time. And I was thinking about the power of an image to last. You know, when I look at Ojeikere's photographs, I find so many of them so remarkable. I feel like they are timeless, even if I'm not really sure how to describe this word of timelessness, you know? How do you see us tackling this idea of creating, like, or maybe even it's like the context and the environment for image making? Does that influence you, or in terms of your considerations?
I love what you just said, because certain things are actually timeless, in that the more energy, the more intuition and passion you put into your work, gradually it enters a realm of timelessness. Be it, it can be all kinds of stuff, apart from what I call very negative things like killing and murder and so on. Those kind of things for me are like no-go areas. But other things, cooking, breathing, being loving to your family, to your friends, to all these things done very, very passionately and with a lot of energy, inner energy, becomes timeless. So now with photography, definitely Okhai Ojeikere achieved this. Definitely. And the more you look at his images, the more you get back. What pains me is that, especially even here in Nigeria, so many young photographers don't really know the depth of his work. And I always tell them, go to the CCA library, go to maybe now Gas Foundation, and look at the work, in the books. And then, of course, now this wonderful exhibition here, because that way you find your own self. Not that you copy his work, no. But you find your own way forward, moving forward. And one thing with him, he had a very acute eye for placement. So it's very, very subtle. And I mean, we talk of the hairstyles, but it's not, so you can look at an image of the hairstyle, it's not just that, it's the whole image. Okhai Ojeikere knew what he was really doing, and he never stopped. He kept on going on, he kept on going on, kept on going on. I'm very much in that kind of path.
It's quite interesting because, I feel like it's really, looking at his work has changed the way that I see, and has changed the way that I see Lagos. I feel like, oftentimes when I'm in a car, I don't know, I'm looking at papers or not particularly observant of the environment, and I've just been looking at the architecture, looking at the city, and it's really renewed the way that I see the city. And I like the way that you use placement, because I think I was struggling to try to find that word that would articulate how sensitive he was to translating what he was seeing into the image. So I wanted, can we talk a little bit about that in the context of your work, like how you address that? Like, it's something a little bit more technical about photography, but composition, lines. I think this is a great image to think through.
So I work intuitively. That means spontaneously. I love the words serendipity, happenstance, coincidence. Luck, but luck is something. No, it's serendipity, happenstance, coincidence. And there's a constant, ongoing weaving all around us all the time. You can't see it until it comes together. You see the people around you. These are people who have woven their own paths, so they're doing their own thing. Like now I'm sitting in front of you, but you are all facing me. I'm looking out at you, and there's subtle moments where things suddenly change. So I try to make images all the time. And then, just as many human beings, there's so many different ways of making photographs. I also want to stress, it doesn't have to be with an analog camera. It can be digital, it can be with a mobile phone, you can draw as well, of course. Many people, now artists actually do photographs, but don't use a camera at all. So just use the paper or, this kind of thing. There are so many different ways. The thing is, experiment, do it, just keep on moving on. Huh?
But you're committed to the analog, to the black and white.
Yes, very much so. At the same time, I look at the work of many, many other photographers. In fact, another thing which is, for me, very interesting, I've never looked at so many photographs as I do these days, especially through the internet, online. So I collect photo books. I love photo books, good ones. And I don't know how many I have, but I look at even more photo books online. So there is a constant learning, looking, engaging, taking in, process.
Mm-hmm. So, if I step back a little bit, when we were doing the research, or I should say when I was doing the research for the theme, Imagining Otherwise, No Matter the Tide, I was looking at the histories of Lagos in the last, say, 150, 200-year period. And I learned that one of the things that really influenced the trajectory of the city was actually the development of the port. And this is tied to the precarity of sea level rising, flooding, erosion, and that being a constant, as well as the practice of land filling and building on reclaimed land. All of this tied to this one central idea that comes from a modernistic idea of how humans live in relationship to the places that they live, which is this idea of controlling nature. I use this as a segue to come into your series, the Bar Beach series that you've been working on since the early 2000s, because this is one site that is actually engaging with this. Can you tell us, what was your interest with this specific site and its kind of role historically?
So I've known of Bar Beach since my childhood. My parents used to take us there in the early 50s. Then you'd take the car across, I think it was called Cowrie Bridge. You'd park it, and then you walk for about 1 kilometer, 2 kilometers to the beach itself. There were trees and some houses, weekend houses from the Lebanese and European community. And then later on, when I started documenting, photographing Lagos in the 80s, it was a tough time. So many a time I would go into Lagos, especially Lagos Island, Isaleko, or also on the mainland. People would drive me away. What am I photographing? Who am I? Where are you from? They would smash my camera. They want to beat me up. 2, 3, 4 times I was actually physically arrested by the police. Had to sometimes, never did I bribe my way out, but I'd make a phone call for somebody to come and get me out anyway. So when it got too tense, I'd go to the beach, because the beach then was the only place I found in Lagos where you could photograph more or less freely. There were even beach photographers, acknowledged beach photographers. So that's how the series in earnest started. But it started in the early 80s, huh? Mm-hmm. And I've been doing it ever since. In fact, now it's very, very interesting, because unfortunately, Bar Beach has been taken over by a building site. I mean, the beach itself is now full of building materials, machines, and also far out to sea now is Eko Atlantic City. But this time now, on this visit, I see they're building a shopping mall there, Orca Shopping Mall. An amazing building on the beach where we used to have leisure time and, people go for their religious festival, all kinds of stuff. Now they're building. So suddenly the beach is no longer a place of leisure, become a kind of commercial venture.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that we were thinking about, and I've spoken at times too with Tokini, is the lack of spaces for leisure in the city. And the work that Temitayo Ogunbi produced, that's sitting in the back garden, is a reflection on this idea of a need for spaces for play and spaces for leisure, particularly within the urban. You've also done work with Oshogbo, if I remember correctly.
I have, and I've been going there not infrequently since the 70s too. And I'm very much interested to understand the people's urban and rural expression. You have to understand their religion, their fundamental, deeply based religion. In our case, is the Orishas, so Yorubas, is the Orishas, and this knowledge depth. And then I went there. I've spent actually weeks there, going into the forest by myself and making photographs of the shrines, of the trees, of the mosquitoes, and also of the spiders. Because I'd go early in the morning, sometimes at 10 a.m., and the spiders have built webs on the paths, in the forest paths, and they come into my face. So it was quite daunting at times.
You know, we spoke about this idea of parachute photography, and you called it voyeurism, how, you know, when you go into another space or another territory that's not yours, it's easy to make the mistake and otherize individuals, right, or communities. How do you deal with this? Because you're constantly traveling, you're moving through different spaces, and making images.
I think the key is to be sincere and honest with oneself. So there are some things I will not photograph. Violence, for one, is very much the case. And then some people's on the street, because I photograph a lot outside. I don't have my own personal studio. I'm not what you would call a studio photographer. I always say my studio is outside, both in the countryside and in the city. But sometimes you see some situations of people in such distress, I can't photograph it. Homelessness, being very ill, terrible accidents, no. I mean, some photographers do this, or people, but it's not my thing. And then the thing again is, when is it not voyeurism? When am I not, so like you said, and I love it, parachuting down into some kind of situation? The thing is, then I not embed myself, but I try to ease myself into any kind of situation I find myself in, be it here in Lagos, or as I said, I live in Berlin, or I often go to Chicago in the States. I've recently been, and I'm spending a lot of time now recently in some, what's it called? Sao Paulo, thank you very much. Sao Paulo, oh, Kumi, thanks very much. Sao Paulo. So the thing is then, I can't say I become a Brazilian, or I become a German, or I become a Lagosian. I just try to ease myself in. Just, swing in very gently, very carefully. And again, avoid this voyeuristic way of looking at things, at people, at situations. It's not easy at times, but experience helps you. I'll give you maybe a short anecdote. My youngest brother, my second brother is sitting just here now, but my youngest brother told me once he saw somebody whose part of the jaw had gone, so you could see the teeth. And he said you couldn't take your eyes off it. You kept on, because it's rude to stare, but you kept on staring. Some years later, I experienced this same situation here in Lagos. And it's true, you can't take your eyes off that particular moment, looking at somebody and you can see the jaw open. And then I saw this same situation again many years later in Berlin, but now I was used to it. So it was no longer this voyeuristic looking. I saw it, I accepted it. In both instances, I didn't take a photograph, but I saw it, I accepted it, I moved on. So this is the kind of easing yourself into the situation.
I was thinking actually, through these Bar Beach photographs, that most of them are taken where you are behind the individual. And I actually kind of connected that to Ojeikere, because he was quite considered about the pose of the person, whether it was profile or right, left, or back. Can you expand a little bit on that? But like what it means to be behind the person that you are, or the people that you are making an image of?
One thing is, when you stand behind someone else, And especially making a photograph of that particular moment is almost as if you're seeing with them, through them, at what they're looking at. I would like to stress, though, there are so many vantage points in photography. And many a time, especially here, it's very interesting, people having group shots. I don't take group shots because you can take it from the side, you can take it from the back. One time in Osogbo, a photographer got angry with me because I was taking a photograph of a group from the behind. He said to me, "What are you doing? Why are you wasting film? Huh? Or why are you wasting time?" I said, "No, I'm doing my own thing." Huh? And gradually, this kind of thing. There is, in taking a portrait of someone, not just one image. I mean, I've thought a lot about this. The face is important, the front, but also the side, the back, the hands, of course, the knees, everything in the person. So in this particular instance, or the one before,
just a second.
It doesn't matter. But I mean, it's looking at someone from as many different vantage points as you can. One thing which is interesting is that some cultures speak eye to eye. Other cultures, in Yorubas as well, we tend to defer, especially to elders. We don't look them in the eye. And sometimes if you want to say something really seriously, you don't look the person in the eye, you say it slightly off. So these are the kind of things. So it's again the gaze, a way of looking, and a way of being.
So how do you move between, no, actually, sorry, I wanted to ask about stillness and also the kind of negotiation that has to happen in public space when you're taking an image and how sometimes it can get a bit hectic.
It is true, sometimes it can get a bit hectic, especially in demonstrations, protests, marketplaces at times where things are very, very hectic. But I always say, and this is my own mantra as well, relax. So I just relax. And I've often found, well, every time actually, no matter how hectic, there are moments of calm. Then I begin to work. So this is it at times. There are times, though, it gets too hectic and you have to really take cover. Especially like once in London during the Notting Hill Carnival, there were riots. People were throwing stones at the police. The police were charging. I mean, you just can't stay around. You have to move away. Things like that. Other times as well, I've been photographing a lot at airports. Some airport, what do you call them, authorities don't like this, especially in the Emirates, and they come out towards me. They've seen me in their CCTV. They come to things like that. So I'm very circumspect and careful. And with over the years and decades, you learn to read the situation and how to move. So stillness is an aspect, being aware, reading your environment, and being there, of course.
So this is just a little bit of an anecdote, but I think you talked to me about one situation where you were on the street where you had to negotiate with some area boys, and you connected that to something that happened to Okhai Ojeikere.
Yes, Okhai Ojeikere told me some years ago that once he was photographing, I believe, a house somewhere on the island, I think, or anyway in Lagos, and the owner of the house arrested him. I mean, took him into the house and kept him under lock and key for hours. I think they were discussing. Eventually, he let him go. So now, in Lagos, especially when I was photographing more actually this century, and sometimes some areas were almost literally no-go areas because so-called area, I don't call them area boys, area men accost you. And they actually want money. So once I was on Nnamdi Azikiwe Way, that time Nnamdi Azikiwe was really bustling, hustle, full of street traders, right? You couldn't drive a car through. And I was walking very slowly through, which I think attracted their attention to me. So they came up from behind and asked me for money in Yoruba. So I told them I have no money, they should leave me alone. they moved away. They came back again, and then they said, we matched people like you. Hey. So I started sweating. Huh? But I told them they should leave me. I started a bit louder. Leave me alone. I have no money. Then they left me, fortunately, and went to a woman ahead of me to start mugging, hustling with her. So it's always a negotiation. Huh? Mm-hmm. But by the way, this is not peculiar only to Lagos. Huh? In other areas of the world, other cities, it's not so much area men or area boys, but people who believe this is our neighborhood, or so this kind of thing. So all the time you have to tread carefully, or as one photographer said to me, sometimes you have to be streetwise.
Mm-hmm. You know, with the ubiquity of mobile phones and the capacity to take images, and probably the democratization of making an image, has that changed how people respond to being or a camera on the street?
It has, a great deal. Years ago, a building burnt on Broad Street at the top floors. And I immediately, it was a fire in an office building. And the next day I went there to make photographs. And there were others, this was about 15, 20, there were others there before me photographing with their mobile phones then. This is the simpler mobile phones. It made the situation so much easier to take photographs. There is still a reluctance of people on the streets in Lagos, especially in the crowded areas, Balogun, Idumota, some areas, Ikeja as well, I've heard, where people are a bit reluctant to have their photographs taken on the street. But for me especially, because now I'm seen as an older gentleman and so on, so it's a bit easier. But I've heard from younger colleagues it's still difficult. And all the time you constantly have to be aware where the area men are staying, watching, and trying to get money off you.
And so, like, moving from public spaces to interior spaces, can you tell us how that happens for you, or if you make this kind of distinction? Because, you know, there's this photo of Mr. Kunle Tejuosho and the Glendora magazine publication, incidentally, that I was referring to from 2001, is showcased in this image. And the musician, sorry, whose name I can't recall.
Fatai Rolling Dollar Williams. The thing is, serendipity. This particular day, I'm not sure where I was staying, but I happened to go to Glendora, the shop in Falamo Shopping Center then. And Kunle was at the desk. The shop actually belonged to his mother. And Fatai Rolling Dollar was there as well. And then I saw this particular situation with the magazine in the middle ground, and I asked him if I could take the portrait, and he said yes. Huh? I met him since then as well. And so these are the kind of things where, like I said, my studio is actually outside, but it's anywhere. So I also photograph in shopping malls, as I mentioned earlier, and airports, railway stations, all kinds of places. There is a kind of play between public and private space. I don't go into people's private houses, though, but sometimes I can photograph their outer court. Possibly I can look inside their inner yard, things like that. It's a constant, ongoing wandering, trying to understand one's environment.
Do you always carry a camera with you?
I say yes. I even go as far as saying I take it to bed with me at night. So when I dream, I can still also take photographs. So I have 2 pillows, my normal pillow and a small pillow for my camera. Why are you laughing? You don't be laughing.
You know, actually, Amaze told me that when his father was still alive, he actually kept the negatives in his bedroom. So, you know, I understand this, like, yeah, maybe it's something specific to photography, but deep love and commitment. So this image was taken in Berlin. It's an image with Okhai, and it was not Queen Elizabeth. It was another British dignitary. I
believe her cousin, a princess,
yeah,
who came for our independence celebrations.
1960.
1960, yeah. Mm-hmm. And that's next to her is Tafawa Balewa. Mm-hmm. And Okhai did a exhibition which started, I believe, in the States called the Short Century. Then he traveled to South Africa and they eventually came to Germany in Berlin. Okhai was a great, great curator. I knew him personally very, not very well, but well. So much so that he got very ill. I believe he had blood cancer. Oh, no, bone cancer. So I kept on asking a friend of his, how is he? The friend, Salah Hassan, a Sudanese professor, said to me, but they go and see him. So 3 of us, Bonaventure, myself, and Emeka, went to see him in January. This is January. He passed on about March, April, May of that year.
Wow.
And he was in, what do you call it, ICU, intensive care. And we had to wear the whole paraphernalia, complete white and everything, right down to gloves and shoes and everything, not knowing a few years later would come COVID, where we would that kind of clothes again. Okhai was ill, but he still entertained us for almost 2 hours, talking very passionately about arts, about many things. And then he passed on 2-3 months later. That same year, I believe, BC passed on then, yeah. So anyway, this was in 2001 in Berlin at the opening of the Short Century there.
Okay.
And you see again in the inner space, not outside, in the inner space, making images. And by the way, this now becomes a historical image because it's 5 years ago. And it's a homage from me to him.
Mm-hmm. I thought this would be a good image to have the conversation around. What is a photograph?
Yes. This is one of my main preoccupations. The question is, what is a photograph? Is it a 2-dimensional piece of paper with an image on it? Is it much more? I mean, there are some here, and some people can really go into a photograph, can begin to smell it, hear it, in black and white images, see the colors even. So many memories come back. So again, my question is, what is a photograph? Can you move on a bit? I mean, so this one, this one in particular, for example, does anybody recognize who is the athlete in the middle ground? A very famous black American athlete.
A runner?
A sprinter, Carl Lewis.
Oh, wow.
So now, again, one of my main hobby horses is racism. I don't like racism. So this was taken in the early 2000s. But then, black people were actually, especially in billboards and so on in Europe, not so common. Today it's very common. Then you ask the question, why? Growing up, I never ever saw a black person on billboards in Europe. So these are the kind of things which I'm constantly photographing, questioning, and why is it that we, black people, are somehow still considered less than white people, even yellow people and so on. So these kind of things. I'm constantly questioning this, but also, of course, what is a photograph? By the way, this photograph is very intuitive. Many people think I actually posed the young man in the front, but it wasn't. He happened just to, that particular moment, I saw it, click. So it's like a dance almost, or one movement. I'm standing there, I'm actually standing a bit on the road, waiting. The threads come together, and then you can make the image if you want to.
How many seconds is this that you're seeing the image and then the moment that you actually, press the shutter?
Sometimes I can wait 5, 10, 15 minutes for something to happen. Other times, in this particular case, this was less than a second. So it's very intuitive, very spontaneous, or what I call happenstance serendipity.
Mm-hmm. So this image is part of the series Photography, Tobacco, Sweets, and Condoms and Other Configurations. And if I remember correctly, it's not limited to one city. It's a moving project. Can you tell us a little bit about it?
So, again, photography, because the question is, what is a photograph? What is photography? I'm constantly questioning this, especially from my perspective, and I would like to say from the black man's perspective. And then tobacco, because at one time tobacco advertisements were so strong, so powerful worldwide. Many countries have forbidden tobacco billboards now. Some of them still do it. I don't think, are there any more here in Nigeria? I don't think so now. Tobacco billboards, no longer. But people still smoke. Huh? And smoking is a very, very bad, I mean, for those who are smokers, I'm sorry, but it's a very, very bad habit because, causes all kinds of illnesses and disabilities. Huh? So that's one particular aspect. And then sweets again. Sweets is also a big industry. And then condoms, because not so much here, but much more in Europe, you often have tobacco machines where you can put in money, or now you use your card to get the tobacco packets out, next to sweet machines for the children. So it's almost literally like educating the children to move from sweets to tobacco. Huh? And then also then the condom machines are also condoms, because the condom machines in Europe, especially in Germany, they look like the tobacco machines. Huh? Many people don't even realize actually condom machines. Huh? The other configurations are many other configurations. Huh? One thing I would like to tell you about is my theme of chickens. Such that, I mean, here we have Chicken Republic. That means the Republic of Chickens, eh? Things like that. Or, I mean, they have all kinds of chicken grill, city chicken, all kinds of things. So I've been photographing the, chicken signs and chicken restaurants and chicken, all kinds of, all over the world. Huh? Up also into free chickens, chickens in factory-like chicken situations, all kinds of things. Huh?
So I'm a very lay person when it comes to photography, but I'm going to venture out and say something, and maybe you can help me through it. When I look at Ojeikere's photographs, I don't see a critical eye in terms of criticism. I mean, I see beautiful images, because, one of the things that I found remarkable is that he was taking images during the Biafran War, and there's no, there's only that one image. If you see that there's, I think Amaze said it was people returning from the Biafran War. They're very, very, very few. But when I look at your photographs, I see there's a whole conceptual language, kind of criticism as well, that's embedded in the image. When did that moment happen in photography where this kind of language became part of the medium?
It's always been there. In Ojeikere's time, there were other photographers who actually photographed the war. Mm-hmm. People like Peter Obey, but others as well. I don't know exactly why you won't see images of Okhai Ojeikere photographing, especially the turmoil during the war years. But I'm very much concerned about social, political, economic, and human situations, interactions. Again, they're not in your face. There's so many different angles to these things, such that sometimes I might have a particular take on a particular situation. Somebody else might have the complete opposite. So then how do we communicate? How do we talk with each other or take photographs of that particular situation? So, yeah, it's an ongoing process.
Mm-hmm. I mean, for me, I feel like this image is in conversation with Ojeikere's photographs of children. In that body of work, what I really see is this really dignified presentation of children, black children. And here we understand that you are critiquing the representation of black children. So it's almost like maybe what you were saying, call and response earlier.
This particular moment was in Austria, in the region called Tyrol. when I saw this, I almost shouted. I mean, are they still doing this? This was about 4, 5, 6 years ago. Are they still making these types of images which denigrate us, especially us as young people? And they're asking actually for money. It's so terrible. That's why I say again, in the majority, in the so-called Western world, they still look down on Africa. It's really deep down inside, and it's so ridiculous. Because, I mean, why? Why, It's so annoying. So I fight back. I push back all the time in my photographs. And sometimes also I start shouting and saying things out loud. But that's the main thing. And yeah, so it's a constant, ongoing process.
What is the phrase? I think it was from Chinua Achebe, until the line, can you finish it for me?
So I don't know it. Which one again?
It said, until the... Yes, we needed to give Togini a microphone.
But maybe one thing, because one of the biggest impulses in my photography is Chinua Achebe. Wole Soyinka, another writer from Ghana, Aikwe Ama, the writers, because I was actually, as I said, studying writing. And I mean, they really went into depth. And I keep on telling people, I've read Things Fall Apart 4, 5, 6 times. Recently again. It's such a powerful work of art. And I mean, it's really amazing. And then you begin to understand, first of all, where I'm coming from. By the way, all these books written by these artists, these writers, were very political, very, very socially concerned, very economic as well. And in fact, both Soyinka and Achebe have written about the war too. So all these kind of things, very, very important.
So we're getting into our last question or two so that we can open up the floor to questions from the audience. Writing within the image. We've talked about writing with light, but writing inside of the image is something that appears or is a reoccurring thread, I guess you could say, through line in the images that I've seen of your work. Can you talk to us about what that is? I'm
very sensitive to signage. The writings on the wall. It's actually a biblical statement. The writing on the wall, warning about the falling, I think it's the falling down of Zion or something. Anyway, so all these things attract me immediately. That's why also billboards, graffiti, what people write on the walls, it's a constant ongoing engagement. Now I see, at one time, this is about 10, 15 years ago, we had many Nollywood posters all over the city. A fascinating time for me. But then they've stopped it. It was actually banned by one of the governors. I forget who banned it. But now you see things like roof repairer, cleaners, and there's one wanted on ship. So I photograph these kind of things, but not directly. Something you read within the photograph, like in this particular case.
Yeah, I moved it to urgent photo here.
This one is actually taken quite near here by the law school residences on Victoria Island years ago. So I'm constantly trying to engage with the writings out there in my own writings.
So I'm going to move to the last picture, which I think is the one from, so not this one, if we can just keep going to the one that we get to, this one, this is Eko Isale, is that right?
Isale Eko.
Isale Eko.
And this is, I forget the name of the street exactly, but in the middle, you can see a bit of greenery. That is where the tram line used to run from Isale Eko towards Bar Beach, where they would dump then the rubbish into the sea. I mean, this is the beginning of the 20th century. So now these are the remnants of this that historical time. Again, you have the back view of a man who wasn't actually looking on, but looking at. So I too am walking the streets, see this particular moment, and I often try to ground a photograph by using other people's bodies, their beings in the space, in my own space.
So thank you so much, Akinbode. It's been a pleasure to have this engagement with you. He has a show on at the moment at CCA, so please go and check it out. It's a group show that shares the name of his project, Sea Never Dry. And also, we have a copy of his book. Sorry. Yeah, Being, Seeing, Wandering, if you're interested, in the library. So for the last few minutes, we'd like to open it up to questions to the audience, if you have any questions for us. Or maybe you guys are too tired after 4 days. Can we get it for the gentleman in the front row? Moody.
Good evening. I want to ask you a question on the postcards, especially... Hello?
Yeah,
Is
okay.
it better?
Okay.
So I want to ask you a question because I think both of us have gone to Wedding together, and in your series about the backdrop of the billboards in African quarters, you understand, in Wedding, I think you didn't speak a lot to us about that. But don't you notice, or is it me, because I've not stayed in Berlin as long as you, but we've gone together to look at these things, did these photographs just happen to occur there? Or do you have a chronology to show that slowly they started to introduce black people into the backdrops? Because in my own experience in Wedding, I noticed that it's concentrated in African quarters, not necessarily all around Berlin. So it's like a focused thing of putting, malnourished children, the whole stereotype of people playing sports or, musicians, that sort of thing. But it's always in African quarters and in Wedding.
Good question, Moody. And Moody is right, because there's a very strange dichotomy in that the Europeans colonized our continent. They had a conference in Berlin in the 1880s, and they divided Africa up amongst themselves. The Belgians, the French, the British, the Portuguese, the Spanish were even there, and the Germans as well. And so when they came to Africa, they had their colonies, and they had their European quarters. What we here in Nigeria call the GRA, Government Residential Areas, or Ikoyi, and places like that. And then they had the African quarters, or what they call the natives, for the natives, us, for the people. But now, especially in Germany, there was a kind of resonance back. So they started naming some of their streets from the beginning of the 20th century with African names. Specifically in Berlin, there's a whole area in the north of Berlin which is called the African Quarter, because almost 30 streets have African names of countries, regions, rivers, and some towns. And also 2 or 3 names of colonizers who did terrible things on the continent, German colonizers. Fortunately now, these names have been removed. Okay, so now, what I found very interesting was that here you still have this, so back in our minds, the so-called European Quarter and the African Quarter, but over there, at least in Germany, you have some areas where you can call the African Quarter. And like Moody said, oftentimes you got some kind of, how can you put it, distortions of what Africa really is. So in fact, even in that African Quarter, there's a subway line which goes through, the U8, and it has a stop called the African Street, Afrikanische Straße. And on that stop, in the subway, you have pictures of animals again. So what I always say, this association of Africa with animals constantly ongoing. In the same African Quarter, you also have, on some buildings, paintings of Africans. On one building in particular, have paintings of tiger. But tiger doesn't exist. Anyway, it doesn't matter. So these are the kind of things going on. So like Moody also said, I've been documenting this African quarter for the last 20, 25 years. It's also a body of work. You can see more images actually in the book. Huh? So there is this, I love this thing, call and response. Huh? I'm an African. I'm living in this, in the belly of the beast, and trying to understand actually what the beast is all about, whereby this beast is not just there, it's here too. Huh? So it's everywhere. So all the time trying to find my way out of the belly onto the surface of the beast. Mm-hmm. Would you like the answer?
Yes, yes, yes. We have one more question. Oh, from Tokini herself. Woo-hoo.
Thank you very, very, very much, Uncle B, which I've been authorized to call you now by Jumoke, and you sanctioned. Thank you, and Missla, for this wonderful conversation. Before I speak, I just wanted to know, are there really no questions? Does anybody have anything they want to ask?
There is one at the back there.
Is there one at the back? Let's take that first, please. Thank you, and then we'll come back here.
Good evening. Okay, my question goes like this. I would like to know what's the future like for children that is interested in this particular kind of stuff, because I have a 12-year-old that is always all about, I want to do photography. I'll keep telling her, focus on your studies first, but I would like to know what's the future, because it's important that they are carried along too. Thank you.
Thank you very much. A good question. Especially for a 12-year-old, encourage her on her studies, definitely, but also from time to make photographs, maybe with a mobile phone or with a simple digital camera. The thing is, to become good at anything, you must practice. You must live it. You must do it. And each of us has a different way of doing it. So it's constantly, literally, every day, finding your own particular way of doing it. I mean, in photographing, it doesn't have to take a long time. Half an hour, 40 minutes. You have a particular theme, flowers, butterflies. I saw a butterfly earlier today. You know, the traffic, people selling things, all kinds of, but do it. And then over the time, over weeks, months, years, look at your work. And then you begin to, your work speaks back to you and tells you which way to go, especially for someone who is 12 years old. By the time they're 16, and if they've been doing it regularly, they're already on their way. So that's very, very good. Again, I want to stress really, especially especially with children, encourage them in all their different aspects. Education is important, but sometimes a child loves to make things with his hands, or to sing, or to become a performer. And encourage them too. In fact, what is very interesting, I find, some of the so-called masters today, artists, started very, very young. And with the parents were encouraging, it's really helped them. I hope that's giving you a good answer. Another, yeah. Over there, please.
Hello. So I use my phone for photography, and just to what you were saying about like being hassled, being harassed, that's one of the things that, you know, I've not really been convinced with the actual camera. I always stop, like, I take spontaneous photos. I see something, you know, and I'm up for it. Because, again, we're in Lagos. I'm in Lagos. I don't want to be harassed. And with my phone, because of how easy it is to operate, I now wonder, with your camera, are there times that you've seen something, and just because of, you know, having to take, like, times that you've missed out on shots? Or is it that you don't necessarily set the camera, you just go for it?
I set the camera and I go for it. All the time. The thing is, though, be very careful. Even with your mobile phone at times, there are situations where people feel you are becoming invasive or you are intruding. I mean, Lagos is a very difficult city, I still find, to photograph. This time, I've been here about almost 2 weeks now. This time, I've been questioned again, despite my gray hairs and so on. But still, I say, oh, just leave me alone, Joe. I move on. But always, I try to negotiate. And sometimes, people can get very, but I found it's getting a bit or slightly better. And then I always tell people elsewhere on the continent, it's sometimes much easier. I photograph a lot in Dakar, in Bamako, in Ouagadougou, other West African cities. No wahala whatsoever, except sometimes from authority, but otherwise nothing. People, in fact, in Dakar, people encourage you. They come, look at this one again. So they will actually tell you other things to photograph. This is very much the case in many cities all over the world. So sometimes I get so annoyed here in Lagos. When I arrived, there's a burger chicken. No, I think, but at the airport. Chicken burger at the airport. So I snapped a photograph, but I didn't do it very openly because I'm not sure whether we're allowed now to photograph at the airport or not. At one time we were not allowed. I think now we are allowed. I'm not sure. But these are the kind of things. But I always say, read your environment and just do it. And by the way, as I said before, the mobile phone is an adequate camera as well, especially the so-called high-end ones. They have very good cameras now. I think maybe one final question?
Right here in the front.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so I'm really inspired by your definition of photography as writing with lights. And in this way, I feel that you've documented a cultural archive that's enduring and ongoing for other people to refer to in future. Would you also refer to your work as a form of non-confrontational activism?
Non-confrontational?
Yes.
It's a very good word, because you're right, I don't want to confront.
Covert.
It is, yeah. I prefer the word non-confrontational. It's very, it's an ongoing thing. Sometimes I can be confrontational, sometimes, but without pushing it. But I mean, for example, sometimes in Europe you have far right demonstrations or activities. I do go at times. And I'm there as a black person, sometimes the only black person, but if they want to attack me, they can't because the police are around. I will take images, but I don't push it too much. And it's the same case, even sometimes here in Lagos, sometimes you see some really rougher things, but yeah, so it's a constant ongoing process. Maybe one thing I can give you as an answer is, I try not to fix myself. I try to be as open and as generous and as sincere, honest as possible. But it's constantly ongoing. So at times, I always ask myself, what am I doing? Why am I here? What is this all about? Every day anew.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, many times I do know the answer. Other times, you keep on going until you find the answer.
Okay, thank you.
It's a pleasure.
You.
Thank you so much, Akinbode. So we will give the microphone to Tukini and then wrap up the session.
Okay, so thank you for this conversation. Thank you very much, Uncle B. Thank you very much, Missla, for insisting that we did this. Missla insists, and we negotiate, like you discussed, you negotiate with people on the street, and I insist, and we go back and forth, and then we land at a position that we're very happy with. And I'm delighted and really thrilled to have had the opportunity to host this conversation on behalf of all of us as ART X Lagos. I wanted to ask you, Uncle B, how a young photographer or an emerging photographer or even a photographer who is making some headway in Nigeria could connect with you. On Wednesday, for example, we had the wonderful lunch with our Art Across Borders artists who are visiting. And they got to spend time with you. They're not young photographers by any means, but I know that for them, the experience was incredibly incredibly profound. I ask because supporting emerging artists is something that is fundamental to our vision at ART X Lagos. You cannot see it today because the initiative has now changed. But for 9 years, we ran the ART X Prize, which became the foremost art prize for emerging artists on the continent by virtue of our investment in the next generation. Seated beside me here is Etinosa Yvonne. You nod because I guess you know her. Yes, you've met before, but she's shy. So I will tell you about Etinosa to tell you why I'm asking this question. Because my dream is for artists like Etinosa and those who are even younger than her to have the profound privilege to learn from you in the same way that we are bringing masterclass artists here to learn of J.D. Okhai Ojiekere's philosophy through the teaching of Amaze. Now, Etinosa in 2019 won the ART X Prize, then known as the Access ART X Prize, as a photographer. In fact, that was the year that Christopher, who was with us on Wednesday, was a finalist. She became the winner. She won the prize. She went to the Gasworks residency, and then she came back and exhibited not in 2020 because of COVID, but in 2021 because we didn't hold a physical fair in 2020. In 2021, she held her exhibition called It's All in My Head, featuring work she was doing around survivors of terrorism and insurgency in the North. Last year, and we've been very proud of her, she's won different grants, etc. Last year, something even more happened. We decided not to run the prize as a fresh competition, but instead to put a jury together part of that looked into outstanding, or rather we called it the Outstanding Alumnus Award. And unanimously, Etinosa was given the Outstanding Alumnus Award. And I was thrilled to walk. She lives in Abuja, by the way, but always comes in for ART X Lagos. And I was thrilled to walk in here, even though I was slightly late, and see her sitting beside me. Now, photographers like Etinosa, like the many that you know who approach you, they're out in the streets. They're navigating difficult terrain. The support, in many respects, is not there. But I believe what we have in this country is the generosity in the hearts of those who have gone before. You see that generosity in the mentorship relationships that young photographers are able to build with others. But I just wanted to ask you if you have any thoughts on that. What can be done? Or rather, let me say, how, if there is any way, let me ask that question, in which aspiring, emerging, etc. photographers currently have access to you. You've shared so generously and wonderfully with us today. In my brief encounters with you, I see what Jumoke has been talking about, why she calls you her Uncle B. So unbelievably generous, and I thank you for it. And I just wonder, beyond those who are lucky in Berlin or Sao Paulo, is there anything going on in Lagos that people can hear from? Because as we heard from that mother who has her 12-year-old daughter that is into photography, this is the medium of choice by a mile for Africa's young artists. It's the medium of choice by a mile because it's democratic. It doesn't require expensive art supplies. All you have is your camera in the streets. And in fact, in 2020, when the EndSARS protests erupted, Etinosa and many hundreds, in fact thousands of her contemporaries, as artists, photographers, took to the streets to document the protests so that we could learn the truth about what was happening on the protest grounds. And when we learned as ART X that Etinosa was on the streets in Abuja, Hitch of Life, who photographed for us here in ART X Lagos, was on the streets in Lagos. Who else was there? Was Obayomi there? Incredible photographers. We started, and this was gridlock and shutdown in Lagos. It was pandemonium. We started sending out as ART X Lagos grants to them in the streets, sending them money, battery packs. There was no New York Times, Wall Street Journal to commission anybody. And they said this was their contribution to the protest. We then decided in our 2020 online edition to host an exhibition of the photographs that had been taken across the nation, which was curated by Temitayo Ogunbiyi. We put out the message and said, we're organizing this exhibition called New Nigeria Studios. We received images from every single one of the states across Nigeria, even greatly impoverished communities, where we didn't even know that there were arts communities or young people, and the images were remarkable. So this is the medium of choice for this young generation. There is great hunger here. There is a great need for knowledge, and there's a great need for connection to the early generation that have gone before. And I hope, I'm not putting you on the spot, I'm literally just asking very innocently, or maybe ART X Lagos has to create one, I don't know. But what are the ways for them to access you, to learn from you, to hear from you, if any exist whatsoever? Thank you.
Tokini, thank you very much. And also, it's a tough question because a very close friend of mine, I mean, you know him as well, Jide Adini Jones, and we've been talking about this a lot. And many or some of the young photographers here in Nigeria do know about me, and we're already connected, especially on Instagram. Yeah. But then also, and I have done and will continue to do workshops or masterclasses here as well. But what Jide and I especially are thinking of is some kind of funding to encourage certain artists to do long-term work, you know, with publications eventually and exhibitions, but mostly publications all over the continent. But then, of course, we start off with Nigeria. And the thing is, again, then, because this kind of thing happens on the European continent, in Japan, in the United States, and some countries in South America, but hardly on the continent. And I do agree, it's really needed. What also could be very good is a good school here in Lagos or in Nigeria, but not so much a school in the sense of with curriculum and so on, maybe a bit more informal, freewheeling, encouraging artists. So it's an ongoing thing. But what Jide and I have come to the conclusion, one of the main things, this is my conclusion, is the funding. Because you can't continue to work every day and you can't pay your rent, you know. I've told people, and it's really the case, sometimes I had no money at all, but I'll still put money into the film, spaghetti film, and I'll just eat rice. No soup, nothing, just rice. This was years ago. But now it's much, much better than that. And I do know that for some younger colleagues it's very similar. But now, the thing is, it shouldn't be like that. So you'll find in the States, they have really established good networks of art colleges, not just for photography, but in photography especially, and networking all the time. So we are at the cusp of this now here in the country. Again, also, I'm very much involved with the Bamako Biennale, the Photo Biennale. And more photographers from all over are coming there as well. So I met 3-4 last time. This was in 2023 in Bamako. The next one, I think, is happening in 26 again. So these are the kind of ways maybe we can gradually build up a thing. But you are right, Okini. We must get something really solid here on the ground. I do agree very much with that. And Etinosa's work is really heavy work. I looked at her website the other day, I was really blown away. It's very, very good. But, but now we must continue, really. But by the way, there are many other artists too, here within Nigeria especially. In fact, because I've been on this for 10, 20 years now, Nigeria, Egypt, Algeria, Tunisia, then South Africa, Senegal, a lot of good artists coming forward. Publication is very important, but not just any kind, good publication, well printed, well done. Off we go. I don't think I can say anything much more. Maybe one last thing, please, a big round of applause to Tokini herself, because she has enabled so very much. Thank you very much, Tokini.
I'm just going to say, if you haven't seen Ojeikere's work in the lobby at the Federal Palace and also at the Waterfront Garden, together with Dennis Osadibe's sculpture, please go and have a wander. It's beautiful and worthwhile. Thank you so much for your time today.